I gave you time para sana to finish the plate, but today, but you still have time the whole day, I think. And then today we're going to discuss about the principles of art. So I just put little bit of um, things, a description, and more of the slides here are um, what do you call it? Uh, Most of the slides here are wait lang, I'm going to arrange my most of the slides here um hmm, description lang, and most of the slides are examples. Sorry, I got distracted. Ayan. So how can I okay, you can see my screen, right? But I can't see you. No, wait. But there. Let me just arrange my screen. Okay. So principles we're going to discuss today. Ulit-ulit. We're going to discuss today about principles of art. Um, I already discussed this before, the principles of art, but I would like to discuss more about this one by one. And then for the next couple of days, you are going to do some exercises regarding the um, the plate. All right. So wait, I'm going to turn off my camera because I don't feel so good at how I look. Anyway, um, so sana ba yun? So for example, um, on March 10, you're going to do the balance plate, and then on March 17, you're going to do a rhythm plate, and then on 24 of March, you're going to um, do harmony, but and then on 31 of March, you're going to um, do emphasis, 7th of April, proportion and ratio, and then 21 of April, unity. I would sometimes ask you to come in so that I could check your progress, but that is to be scheduled, that is to be announced. All right.
Excuse me
So,
po, ma'am. What's the next paid's assignments po? Just to be clear for this month and plus a little of April.
so again, I'm going to repeat it again. On 10 of March, you're going to do balance plate. So basically, it's all the principles of art, but you're going to execute them one by one. So 10 of March, balance. 17 of March, rhythm. 24 of March, harmony. 31 of March, emphasis and subordination. And then 7 of April, proportion and ratio. And then 21 of April, unity. Proportion or scale, or proportion and ratio. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So the principles of art are, di ba you have elements of art? Elements of art are the objects that makes up a composition, but the principles of art are the arrangement or how you may arrange those elements in a composition. So these are um, the laws or the principles or how or a guide to make you to help you make a better composition. So these are your principles of art. So basically that's why I said that I'm going to just show you most of the time some pictures or some sample artworks so
Oh,
that will guide you in making your works or your plates. All right, but at the end of the day, it's up to you on, and you will be graded on how you're going to arrange the elements of art. All right. So you have balance. What is balance? Balance here is the distribution of visual weight. So when you say balance in visual art, it is the weight in what you see. So the objects weight, the visual weight of the objects. So in this picture, for example, one is thin and one um, is thick. So it looks like out of balance, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have balance. It has balance, but it is called a symmetrical balance. So the balance here is the illusion of art that creates the said balance. So another asymmetrical balance is this one. So this has small object here and a big object here, and the heightened significance of the balance is what makes it balanced at the same time. So there are different kinds of balance. You have a symmetrical balance, asymmetrical balance, and radial balance. The symmetrical balance is when you cut it in half, like this one.
oh,
When
it's
you cut it in half,
symmetrical.
Nala, I'm going to mute you, huh? Okay, thank you. So, if you cut it in half, you the left side will mirror the right side. So it is symmetrical balance. Do you get it? So that is symmetrical balance. But when you say symmetrical balance, it could also be when you cut it on half horizontally. The top part would also um, be also like be equal to, or it will mirror to the bottom part as well, and vice versa. So another example of symmetrical balance is this one by Leonardo da Vinci. So if you cut this in half, the left side would mirror the right side. And then this is another symmetrical balance but this kind of balance shows the is mathematical. So this is yung the golden ratio wherein uh 3/4 would correspond to meaning the area here is equal to the area here. So that is the golden ratio, and that therefore also this is balanced. And then you also have a symmetrical balance, just like this one by Hiroshige. So this is titled The Man on Horseback Crossing on a Bridge. It is a series from the 69th station of the Kiso Kaido. This was made in 1834 to 1842. So if you can see, if we cut it in half, it doesn't exactly mirror the top or bottom or to the left to the right. So it is a symmetrical balance. Even it is still balanced, but it is asymmetrically balanced in a way. In a way that the weight here and the weight here is also equal in some point. And then this is also a symmetrical balance. This is an installation by Alexander Calder, and it is entitled Untitled. And then you also have this one. This is radial balance, an example of radial balance by Jackson Pollock. This is an action painting wherein you splash painting, and it's a form of abstract expressionism. And this one is titled Convergence and was made in 1952. And another form of a symmetrical, sorry, this is a symmetrical balance. And this, sorry, no, radial balance. This is radial balance. And then this is another form of radial balance, wherein radial here would refer to circular objects. So if you can see how that balanced out. This is by Matt Calderwood. And then you also have contrast. So contrast is refers to the color or how the light, the effects of light appears in the composition. So there is not only in colors pala, but it also, the contrast can appear to the size, to the proportion, and to other things, and through the space as well. So, for example, in this picture, the contrast here is color. There is a stark difference between the bell pepper and the orange background or the oranges. So that is contrast. So in a way, the contrast here can bring vitality to the piece. And that this is another form. So there is also called a texture contrast, wherein there is the difference between the textures used in painting or the textures you see in the painting. So you have a smooth texture and then a very rough texture. So this is by Vincent van Gogh. And um, ayan. And then this is another example of a color contrast, where this red here is contrasting to the rest of the color. So this is Joaquin Sorolla, Father Jorge protecting a madman. So the madman and Father Joffre or Joffre, I don't know. So there is also a stark contrast between the light and the dark. For example, this area here is darkened and Father Hofra is lighter. So that would help you bring emphasis to the picture. And then you also have detail contrast. For example, the area here is very detailed and the area here is very muted or not so detailed. Um, it helps bring the emphasis to here, or meaning the eye would immediately see this one because of the detail contrast or because of the stark difference of the contrast. And then you also have shape contrast. So that is a difference between the shapes. So for example, the shapes here are a little bit uh, freeform or not so, um, you know, not so geometric. It's very organic. And then if you And also this one, the road, for example, is a very bit winding, curving. So, but if you see the contrast in the building here, it is very geometric. So it gives highlight to the building here in some point. Tell me if I'm being too fast, all right? So, and also this one, this is interval contrast, wherein there is a variation of lengths or intervals between the trees, for example. For example, this one. The spaces, the distances are uh, varied, but you could also see how there is, it gives out contrast, and it also gives out a sense of rhythm. And then this is another different color contrast by an art. And then this one naman is another kind of color contrast, but with lines, and how contrast could also give out optical illusion. For example, this one, the color here, red, the red here is more dominant, and then it gives shape to egg-like object here because of the color. And then also here how the black and white stripes would pop out because of the contrast. And then this is contrast in color as well. You could see how there are different kinds of colors and how the complementary colors, red, yellow, and green, makes the color pop out. And then you also have emphasis. Sometimes when you use contrast, it would immediately bring out emphasis. But emphasis could be color, unity, balance. So, for example, the image here, there is a stark contrast between the black, the purple, or the violet, and the yellow, or the gold or yellow green color here. So it gives out emphasis to these figures here because of the stark color contrast. And then you also have to look at this one. There is also a color contrast here, and that it gives the emphasis on this moon here. And then you also can play with the light or the values of color. For example, this is a painting by John Singer Sargent, Apparition Beggar Girl in 1877. If you could see how the color or the color and the brushstrokes can bring out the contrast. And then this one also by Claude Monet. Uh, this is a sunrise impressionism painting in 1872. And this is another using different ano naman, uh, textures or brushes, but at the same time, with the help of the color, you could see how the rose is given a focal point in the painting. And another example, the values here from light to dark gave out a contrast or an emphasis to the one who is working. And also right here, if you could see here how the values also can play to um, the giving out emphasis on the figure. And this one also, uh, even if you are using impressionist style strokes, you could also give contrast here by using color and values. And also the same with this one. You could also give emphasis by giving out space by the sense of space. Like this one doesn't have other people here, and suddenly you have this one, these objects here. And another, this one, value, color value contrast. But also if you could see there is a stark contrast also on the textures. For example, this looks smoother, and then this is more rough compared to this one. So you can see how the emphasis is to the girl, to the little girl. So you also have rhythm and movement as a principle of art. So sometimes, most of the time, you could uh, put a rhythm uh, in an object or in a painting by uh, repeat, repeat, repeating objects again, again, and again. So, for example, the painting of waves crashing, the viewer will automatically see the movement as the wave finishes. So sometimes the use of bold and directional brushstroke will help the painting, and then most of the time it will see some movement in the painting. So for example, this one, oh, I forgot to tell you that the movement here in visual arts are implied movement most of the time, meaning when you see it, it will look like it's moving, but it's actually not moving. But there is just an impression that it is moving. So if you see it here, the movement here is on because of the brush strokes. So this is another painting by Frederick Judois, Breaking Surf, and another painting by Vincent van Gogh, Starry Night over the Rhone. And another by Vincent van Gogh's The Starry Night. You could see how the swirls could look like it's moving. So that's the effect of textural brushstrokes. And then also this one by Claude Monet, Fishing Boats on the Coast at Itrat. Itrat, sorry, I cannot pronounce it, in 1884. But if you could see also the contrast helps, the white and the gray or the dark hues helps also with putting movement on the sea. You can see how there is an alteration of the gray and the lighted area. So this is by Joaquin Sorolla, Sea and the Rocks. And then you also have another by Joaquin Sorolla, The Rocks at Javea. If you could see how his brushstrokes implies movement. And then another by Childe Hassam, the Duck Island from Appledore in 1911. So you can see how the brushstrokes affect the how you see the painting or how do you see the objects. And also sometimes the brushstroke could also be muted, just like this one by Dan Scott in Tasmania. And then another one. So a repetition of similar patterns or similar objects, just like this one, or a variety of elements could also give out different movements. So just like this one and this one. So if you can see how there is also a contrast in color from yellow to white and blue. And another one by Don Scott, Three Boats at Kingfisher Bay in 2016. And another one by Claude Monet, Stormy Seas. And this one is by Vincent van Gogh again, Olive Trees Under the Yellow Sky. You can see how the directional brush strokes, there is one direction. Can you see? It gives out a sense of direction or a movement. And then this one naman by J.M.V. Turner, Snowstorm. This was made by a technique called scumbling. So scumbling is when you use a dry brush to in dry brush meaning a brush that is not wet and that you put paint on the brush and then it would the effect would be like wispy. So and then you put it on the canvas. So that is what you call scumbling. And then this one naman by Winslow Homer, titled On the Leeward Shore in 1900. So if you can see how there is movement here because of the increased contrast and the turbulence in the foreground compared to the background. So you can see the contrast here. This is very peaceful while this one is not. And the lines of the water could also give rise to um, the impression that there is movement. And then there is a repetitive pattern of shapes. And then the thick paint also used for the crashing white water. And then this is also a sketch of movement of water by Leonardo da Vinci. And then you also have Claude Monet, the Rue of Montreal in Paris, Montreal. So if you could see how the wispy lines or the difference, the lines are not so distinct or detailed or bold. You can see how there is an effect of wind on the flags. So it gives out movement. And then also this one by Corot, The Gust of Wind. So not only sea, but also the wind can also give a sense of movement. So if you can see how the leaves are going here to the left side and how the wispy paint or lines could or shapes could give out a sense of movement. So there is also the need to add make it more transparent and less opaque to give out the sense of that it's moving. And another one, this one by Abraham Archipoff, The Laundress. So you could see how the smoke can give out a sense of movement. And also there is a little blurred area here. And then in contrast to here that is stand still, this is a little bit blurred, meaning um, it gives out a sense of movement. So the transparency, the blurred lines, and the color can affect how um, one the illustration or how the picture or the visual um, art or visual composition could look like. And then you also have proportion and scale. So what is the difference between proportion and scale? Proportion is the relationship between the items in a painting, while scale naman is a relationship to the object or within an object. So, for example, the sky and the mountains, or the road and the mountains, uh, the proportion is that the sky is bigger and the road is smaller compared to the mountains. Scale naman is about the size. So, for example, um, the mountain is bigger, while the mountain is big, but and it's not the same size as the road. So when you say proportion, it's when you compare it to another, while scale is more about the size of the object itself. So for example, this one, you could see how this how this one is not proportionate to the face. For example, the hand is much more smaller to the head, so it's not proportion. But or how the guitar is smaller compared to the chest, or how the guitar is smaller to the person here. So that is proportion. So you could also find more about proportion. You have to search about the rule of thirds or the golden ratio. So, ayan. So, rule of thirds and golden ratio, we would discuss this more on figure drawing. Scale naman, example here is that the clouds is as big as the size of the mountain for something like that. So, scale is, I know, refers to the size of uh, overall size of the object, while proportion parang the size lang in relative to or compared to for example the body part, ganon. So for example, this one is well proportioned. So the size of the head is almost the same size as the hand, for example. That is the proportion. And then this one naman, the head is bigger than the body and it's not well proportioned. And guys, there is nothing wrong if the if your objects are not well proportioned kasi Most of the time, artists use it uh, as a technique to give emphasis on their subject matter. For instance, this one, there is a hieratic scale, meaning the person that is bigger here means that it is more important, or the person is more important compared to the two figures here. So that's why this is bigger. So that happens a lot in ancient art. Sorry, I'm going to drink water now. For example, excuse me. Do you have a question so far?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And then this one naman, if you compare it here, the size or the scale of this one, the figures in front is smaller in the background. But if you compare it to the size of the temple here, or the buildings, the the buildings are almost the same size as the figures in the foreground, but it is well proportioned to the building. Do you get it? What size and proportion is? Guys?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And then this one also by Rat King. You could see how the size or the scale here, the scale of the rats are bigger than the person. So this is a sculpture. And then this one naman, the scale on the rock, markings on the ground in Nazca Desert, Peru. And then this is miniature naman, miniature prayer not with case. And then you could also see this floor cake by Claes Oldenburg. And then this is miniature sculpture naman by Alan Wolfson, the subway platform. And then this one naman is an installation of balloons in the Gagosian Gallery in New York. And then you also have unity and variety in um, as a principle of art. So in art, unity conveys a sense of completeness, pleasure when viewing the art. There is also cohesiveness to the art and how the patterns work together to bring unity to the picture or the object. So, for example, sorry, the colors here provide unity. So it gives out a sense of unity because of the same colors. And then also this one, there is harmony because of, or a sense of unity and harmony because of the progression of the visual elements at work. So if you can see how this one is detailed and circular, and then from here somehow naging the elements or the objects become more hazy and less detailed, but it gives more emphasis on this part. But um, At the same time, the logical progression of the relationship gives rise to harmony and unity and or balance to this work. And then you also have this one. This is unified naman by the use of similar colors. So the brownish hue can give rise to unity as well. So even if there is a strong contrast to the light areas and the dark areas, but it also has the same sepia color, so it gives out a sense of unity or togetherness. And then this one naman, the figures here is a little bit rounded and ganon. So it gives it also gives out a sense of unity. This is by George Surratt, titled Barters at Anis and Asniers. And then this is uh, by Wallace Seeley Kandinsky, Several Circles. So if you could see how there is also unity with diversity, but there are different sizes, different colors, but if you could see how the shapes are almost the same or similar, but there is still unity or harmony in the painting. And then this is by Rene Magritte, Gol Golconda. So ayan. There is a sense of unity with the repetition of the images, although the images are not similar, are similar and that they are varied, there is still a sense of unity. And then you also have variety. So variety refers to using different qualities or instances in a visual element. So variety can break up monotonous or repetitive areas. So for example, this painting here by Tom Thompson, The Maple Saplings in 1917, there is a variation of different colors from reddish brown to yellow and green. And then you also have blue here. But what gives it a sense of unity and balance is that there is a repetitive shape scattered all around um, the the painting. But what makes it different at the same time, it gives what gives it a little bit sense a little bit difference is there is what do you call it um, the lines are varied here. So if you can see this from the straight lines here, there is a break of straight lines. And in that sense, it gives out a sense of harmony as well. Aren't any uses, but it gives a little bit more of emphasis. So variety naman, this one by Aska Galan Kalala. So if you can see the lines are similar, but they're also varied, but at the same time it gives out a much more calmer work and more interesting work. And then this is another example of variety and unity by Rudolf Stuzzi. If you could see here that all of the buildings are not in are in a curvy shape. They're not straight. So there is a unity in style, although there is a variation of um, design of it, or our objects, design on objects. And same thing here by Adelaide by Rudolf Stussy again. And this is by Grantwood, Spring Turning. And this is another by Gustav Klimt, The Flower Garden. So if you can see that there are difference in shapes, but you can see that the circular or the repetitive or the similar shapes, although they are varied, can give out a sense of unity. And another one by Rudolf Stussy. And you also have patterns. So a pattern can also give out a sense of unity, uh, balance, harmony, and rhythm because the elements here are repeated and that they have also a sense of structure, although the repetition might be random. So, so this one compare, and then another one is this one. So if you could see the color and the brush strokes give out a sense of pattern. So it's not always the shapes, but the brush strokes could also give out a sense of pattern. And then another one, this one by Paul Klee. The shapes also give out a sense of pattern. And this one, a natural pattern or the greatest by nature is by a leaf. This is watercolor on volume by Rory McEwen. And then this is man-made pattern naman by William Morris. This is a pencil and watercolor sketch in a canvas wallpaper pattern for a canvas wallpaper pattern. So ayan. And then pattern naman could also be um, by brush strokes or in a sense, it could also be applied to painting, not only on wallpaper and design. Just like this one, there is a pattern here, and this one as well at the bottom. And another one by David Hockney, The Road Across the Wolds. And another one by Andrew Goldsworthy, Rowan Leaves Laid Around the Hole. This is located in Sculpture Park on 25th October 1987. And then another one by Friedrich Hunter Racer. So this is mixed media entitled Arena Land Over the Balkans. So if you can see how the pattern can make an interesting artwork as well. And then this one by MC Etcher. You can see how there are patterns of bird and squares and how it makes an interesting composition. If you could also see how the left and right mirror to each other. So, ayan. And another one, telephone booths on oil on canvas. And another one, a pattern. For pattern is by the British rule and Jacobean era. The persons are different. You can see some interesting differences, but um, you, because of the pattern, it looks almost the same. And then this is another pattern during the pop art era by Andy Warhol. This is Marilyn Monroe, and then this was made by silk screen prints. And then pattern can also be used as a decoration, just like this one by René Magritte, Levaner, the Statues, The Future of Statues in 1932. This is all on plaster head. And then this is another example by Gustav Klimt, a portrait of Adele Bauer. Uh, this is an oil and gold leaf panel. So if you could see how the patterns of the work of art and how it made an interesting work. Lastly, well, these are references. So do you have any more questions? How do you find this slideshow or the yes?
Ma'am, I have a clarification lang
Mm, yes.
regarding scale and proportion.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so okay, from just on a clarification lang, so scale is basically the size and proportion is like, can you clarify that? Kasi
The
medyo,
proportion is the relationship of objects, the size. Proportion is the relationship of the sizes of the object in comparison to, for example, the body or in comparison to other objects in the composition. Do you get it?
and then scale po.
Scale is the size. For example, let me show you. Sino yun? Ay, na-close ka na. So, for example, bigger eyes, big one eye is bigger than the other eye. That is proportion. For example, in so wait lang. Let me. Sino ba yun? So wait lang. For example, this one. Can you see my slide?
Yes po.
So the size here is the same as this one, right? But it is proportion to the building. Do you understand?
Uh, so proportion is more holistically the whole painting, and scale is a specific part of the painting, parang a specific element. Tama ba? My
No,
understanding.
proportion is the relationship with each other, the elements. Proportion is the relationship of elements in the painting.
Mm-hmm.
Size is the size. If you measure it in ruler, that is the size.
Okay. Size yung scale po.
Yes, yes.
Ah,
Size is
okay.
the scale, sorry. Yes.
Ah, sige po. Thank you, thank you.
Is that clear?
Understand it way more. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, yes. Scale, ano sabi ni Patrick? Scale ata is the size of the man versus the bear. No, scale is um how do I? So look at this painting again. Scale is the size. So proportion is when you compare it to the bear, for example, man versus the bear. Um, if proportion, if you compare the size of the man and the bear, but size, for example, it's the size, or the scale is the size itself. So, for example, you get a ruler, you measure it, that is the scale. Proportion is if the relationship between uh, the the man and the bear, and the scale is which is, for example, the man is 3 3 inches in the painting, and the bear is 4 inches in the painting. So that is the scale. Do you get it?
Yes, way better po. Wait, so okay. So yung scale is yung size. So let's say the size of the guy and the size of the paintings. Well, the proportion of that is yung now that you have yung size, diba, of the people and the proportion, they have to be harmonious and be in proportion with each other. Tama ba?
Harmonious and proportion. What? So let's go back. Let's go back. So, for example, this one scale. The scale here is how big this person compared to this one. So,
Yes
this
po.
is bigger, this is smaller, right?
That's yung scale, right?
That is the scale.
Okay.
Proportion is the relationship between uh, if you compare it. So if you look at the size here, the scale of the hand compared to this one, the hand is bigger here, and this one is smaller, which is not really proportion. Do you get it?
Okay, I naintindihan na. Okay na. Okay na. Thank you. Thank you. Pasensya na po
Yeah.
kasi that was kind of confusing, pero I got it. I got it.
Okay. So, does anyone have any more questions?
No more questions po.
How about others?
For the plates naman po,
I will post it.
all right. But will you post mga possible samples?
I don't want to post I would post this slide in our Google Classroom, but I will give you the instructions. All right, and I will post them on the day itself. All right.
Means next week.
Yes, next week. I'll stop recording.